Hello, and welcome to episode 46 of Sarastro's Star Wars painting series. In this episode, we're going to paint Onar from the Jabba's Realm expansion from Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars Imperial Assault. Onar has a range of interesting colours to work with, and I've chosen to add some further interest with the use of some optional environmental lighting inspired by the wonderful character art. Let's take a look at the painting stages. I've chosen to prime the figure in black, followed with some grey and white zenithal highlights applied from above. We'll then apply the base colours, and I'll be applying the paint quite thinly for certain areas to allow the zenithal highlights to show through. I'll then be working one area at a time, adding highlights and shade. Our finishing touches will include adding a few final details to the outfit, along with some weathering and a scenic base. Let's begin with the base colours. I'm going to begin by painting the trousers using a roughly equal mix of Kantor Blue and German Grey. I'm thinning this down so that the paint is translucent enough to allow the bright raised edges in the texture to show through. Next I'm painting the various straps and the holsters by mixing roughly equal measures of Steel Legion Drab and black. This too can be applied thinly enough to allow some of the underlying zenithal highlights to show through. This is especially useful for the chest area. For the orange clothing, I'm using Trollslayer Orange, darkened and desaturated with a little Naggaroth Night. I'm applying this in a couple of layers. For the yellow plating, I'm using Averland Sunset mixed with a little Waaargh Flesh. I'm adding the green to reduce the level of orange, producing a slightly colder, darker yellow. I didn't notice until later that there are also some small pieces of plating on the tops of the boots. For the boots themselves, I'm using Doombull Brown mixed with a little black. This too can be applied quite thinly. For the guns, I've chosen to mix some black and dark sea blue to produce a non-metallic finish, but you could of course use any of the previously explored approaches to painting weapons in the series. Like the other dark colours we've applied so far, this too can be thinned down to allow the raised edges and details to appear lighter than the recesses. This can also be used for the eyes. I'm now going to paint the skin, and I'm using Waaargh Flesh mixed with just a little Naggaroth Night. For the tusks, I'm using Rakarth Flesh mixed with a little Bugman's Glow. It's a small detail, but here I'm using pure Rakarth Flesh to paint the inner watch strap. And finally, I'm painting the watch face with some of the orange we used earlier. With that done, we're ready to add some highlights and shade. I'm going to begin by highlighting the skin, so we'll be returning to the original Waaargh Flesh and Naggaroth Night base tone, which I'm going to lighten with Straken Green in a couple of stages, until we get to pure Straken Green. These early layers will cover most of the skin except for the deepest recesses. I'm now using pure Straken Green and still covering a good portion of the skin because I'm going to be going brighter still in a moment. For the upper highlights, I'm going to begin adding some sky blue to the Straken Green. If you're using Citadel paints, then something like Lothern blue mixed with a little white would also be fine. Naturally, it's the top of the head and the shoulders as well as the facial details that I want to be brightest. This would be a perfectly good place to finish your highlights, as the environmental lighting I'm going to be adding in a moment is entirely optional and won't be to everyone's taste. If you aren't going to add the orange light effects, you could now simply skip to adding the purple shade as detailed in a moment. I couldn't resist adding an orange glow inspired by the character art, so we'll now begin mixing some Trollslayer orange into my Straken Green. I'm now using this to begin creating my orange cast in thin layers, coming from Onar's upper left. This is an effect that can be as subtle or over the top as you like, and you could stop at any point in the process as soon as you have a look you're happy with. Even this first layer is enough to provide some mood and interest, and you don't have to go any further than this if you wish. I'm looking for something a little more dramatic, so I'm going to increase the intensity of the orange. Alongside some additional orange, I'm now also adding some yellow. Next I'm going to add some shade to the recesses using Druchii Violet. This can be thinned with a few drops of Larmian medium to allow us to build up the tone more gradually. This can be brushed into the creases of the skin, but can also be glazed over larger areas to create some interesting tonal variations. I'm now returning to my orange highlights to see how far I can push the saturation. Here I'm mixing some Mephiston Red into my orange to add some more intensity to the face area in particular. I'm now boosting the highlights elsewhere to really max out the contrast. Here I'm adding some white to achieve my brightest highlights. and now a little more yellow. You can see I'm playing around quite freely with the different colours to achieve a pleasing level of richness and variation in the skin tone. Here I'm trying some more pinkish tones with the addition of some red. Stroking the brush on the back of the hand is a nice way of unloading excess paint, but also helps us to get a feel for the consistency. The original green skin tone can be glazed on to reduce the intensity of the orange, or help the transitions look more organic. With the skin complete, I'm now going to highlight the tusks with some Kislev Flesh. I'm lightening this with the addition of some white. Next I'm going to highlight the clothing, reusing the original orange and purple mix, but with a smaller proportion of Naggaroth Night. I'm now lightening this with the addition of some ivory in a couple of stages. And I'm now including a little Yriel Yellow for my brightest highlight. Next I'm going to darken the shadows with a more purple mix of the original two colours. I've chosen to make this more purple still. You can see I'm applying this in very thin layers. For the yellow plating, I'm going to begin the highlights with some Yriel Yellow. For the leg armour, I'm just hitting the top surface and building the brightness up in a couple of layers. I'm now thinning this down and brushing it up towards the top of the shoulder armour to create a rough gradient. I'm now lightening this with some white. I'm also going to glaze some orange to the top of the shoulder. Here's my brightest highlight. I'm now going to mix some Naggaroth Night into the original Averland Sunset and Waaargh Flesh base colour to create my shadow tone. I'm using this to simply shade the downturned surface of the leg armour. And I'm brushing it thinly into the lower portion of the shoulder armour. We can now paint on the black stripes, and I'm using black mixed with some dark sea blue for this. These stripes can then be highlighted with the addition of some white in a few stages. I'm also mixing in a little orange for the top of the shoulder. I'm now going to work on the weapons, and I'm going to begin by providing a shade with some Nuln Oil. I'm now providing some highlights by mixing some white into the off-black base tone in a couple of stages. I'm now going to use the black and dark sea blue mix to deepen the shadows of the straps. Here I'm doing a little feathering to create a simple gradient. This can also be used to shade the recesses of the trousers. I'm now going to highlight the straps and holsters by mixing some white into the original black and brown base tone in a few stages. You can see that I'm pushing the highlights quite far around the upper chest area. I'm now highlighting the trousers once again by adding some white to the original blue and grey base tone. For the shoes, I'm using Doombull Brown, once again mixed with a little white. And I'm painting the soles of the shoes with some XV88. Finally, I'm going to tone this down with some Agrax Earthshade. With the highlights and shade complete, we're now ready to add some finishing touches. I'm now going to paint the pale green stripe on the outfit with some neat Straken Green. This can be lightened with some white to pick out the raised bumps in the fabric. Next I'm going to mix some Leadbelcher with black and use this to paint some chips and scratches onto the leg armour. I'm now lightening this with some white and painting roughly inside the main scratches. Here I'm mixing some Doombull Brown with a little black to add some dirty weathering to the shoulder armour. Next I'm going to provide some pure white reflections to the eyes. Just one to each of the smaller eyes because there's so little room, and two for each of the larger eyes. I'm also providing an orange reflection to Onar's left eye. Here I'm using some of the off-black to provide some optional dark lining to emphasise the joins between some of the main sections on the miniature. This is something that would often be provided by the use of a global shade, which I haven't used for Onar. I'm now painting the watch face, firstly with the off-black. Next I'm painting some Waaargh flesh within the face. And now some Moot Green towards the top, creating the impression of a small gradient. I'm now going to mix some orange, red and white to match the coloured design elements on the gun. Next I'm going to glaze some Troll Slayer orange over the highlights, mostly on the back, to help sell the environmental lighting. And I've realised I've yet to paint the strap buckle, which can be done either with silver metallics or a simple grayscale. After providing a matte varnish, all that remains now is to rebase the miniature as described in episode 10. And this completes Onar. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video and that you let me know with a like, comment and by subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. As always, you'll find details of where to find me on social media in the video description, along with links to the album, which features music from the series. My sincerest thanks as always go to the kind patrons for funding this series. Each video takes a full week to produce and I simply couldn't do it without their support. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Star Wars Imperial Assault. Happy painting!